Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Once again, this is Ed DeVoe, president of the New Jersey Cannabis Association. I just went to the chat feature and I don't see an everyone tab. So I'll ask our production crew to take a look at that. If you could take a look at the chat feature, right now there is no everyone feature in the chat. So if you could take a look at that for us, I'd really appreciate it. And we will get started. Welcome to a special edition of Lunch and Learn. We are just so pleased to have someone who is no stranger to the CannaBusiness Association and certainly the cannabis community. And before I turn it over to our good friend, Executive Director of the New Jersey CRC, Cannabis Regulatory Commission. So too many acronyms, Jeff. Before I turn it over to Executive Director Jeff Brown, I just want to first thank our sponsors. I'd like to thank Burton Trent Public Affairs, Curaleaf, an ATC and board member, Financial Resources Federal Credit Union, Puffin Entrepreneurs and Investors, the Syska Hennessy Group, Sprague Energy, our energy partners, Dutchie, Garden State Green, PROTEUS 420, Saks LLP, the Sheet Metal Workers Local 19, and the UFCW, the United Food and Commercial Workers. Also, I want to encourage everyone to continue to visit the NJCBA website, check out our upcoming events. Note that on October 27th, we have a major event for those of you who will be in the licensing space. Would love to see you at our October 27th event at Galloping Hill Golf Club in Union, New Jersey. Looking forward to seeing you there. So once again, welcome. And I will turn it now over to our special guest, Jeff Brown. Jeff, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Ed, and thank you to all the members of the New Jersey Cannabis Association. I think about myself as an advocate and sometimes an evangelist for the potential of New Jersey's cannabis market. When I think of other people who are right there with me, Ed, you're top of the list in your organization. Really just appreciate the work that you've done to advocate for this market, to advocate for good, sound policies that will ensure New Jersey is successful in what we're trying to do. So, just thank you for being a partner to the CRC, holding our feet to the fire when we deserve it, but nonetheless giving us, solid feedback from, people who are in this market and trying to get in this market. So thank you for having me today. So I'm going to cover a couple of things. I'm going to share my screen here. I'm going to talk through just some of our accomplishments to date. We hit a key sort of timeline milestone last Friday in that that's marked the 18-month mark for when the CRC has been in existence. Hard to believe it's only been 18 months. Going to talk through a market update. So we released some sales numbers on Friday. So going to cover those and then get into a deep dive into where we stand with licensing. I know that's really of concern to a lot of folks. We're pushing to get through that as quickly as we can. So I'm going to cover that as well. So I'm going to share my screen. All right. All right. Can you see the NJCRC logo? Can everyone
There we
see the
go.
slide?
You're up.
Yep, we're good. Okay, great.
Thank you.
Okay. So first and foremost, as I mentioned on Friday, we hit the 18-month mark for when the CRC has been in existence. So August 12th, we performed on April 12th of 2021. In that short time span, we've held 18 public meetings. In the first 4 months of existence, we drafted and adopted 261 pages of comprehensive rules for cultivation, production, and retailing of recreational cannabis. Within 8 months of our establishment, we launched our new licensing platform and in 9 months began accepting applications for cultivators and manufacturers. In 11 months, began accepting applications for cannabis retailers. And in our first year, we hit the mark where we had issued 102 conditional licenses for new cannabis businesses, all in the first 12 months. Then a year and 9 days after our formation, the CRC authorized recreational sales to begin on April 21st, 2021. Those of you who've been following New Jersey, following the law, you know that the law set up the ability for medical operators to expand and transition. And so that was the first foray into this market. But a really important milestone nonetheless. Then on August 1st, so just 15 days ago, the CRC officially proposed new permanent regulations that, provide technical updates to a number of provisions in our initial rules, and also importantly, expand licensure opportunities to all 6 classes of licenses established by the law, including wholesalers, distributors, and delivery services. And at the end of July, our July 28th meeting, we eclipsed 300 conditional licenses issued to cultivators, manufacturers, and retailers. Importantly, we continue to prioritize medicinal cannabis, and the sales tax for medical cannabis was totally phased out as of July 1st, 2022. And then on July 28th, we also made the move of cutting registration fees for all registered patients from $100 every 2 years to $50 every 2 years. When I began at the Department of Health a little over 4 years ago, registration was $200 every 2 years. So we've cut that in those 4 years from $200 every 2 years down to $50. Additionally, I wanted to highlight some of the regulatory moves we've made. Thanks to our legislature, our governor, New Jersey has a really strong legal framework, statutory framework on which to build. What we did was we listened to advocates, we listened to interest groups, like New Jersey Cannabis Association, others, and we took that strong statutory framework and built on it. So what are some of the things that we did? We took the conditional licensure process and listened to stakeholders and made it so that conditional license holders did not have to have site control, did not have to have municipal approval, could start that process, could start our licensure process and get going towards those things, but not have to have them at the point of submitting a license application. We also included some of those lowest license application fees in the nation. We have the establishment of the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, and that is an office, it's created in statute, but it's dedicated to really make sure that we're hitting our goals, hitting the goals in the law and those we establish for ourselves when it comes to licensure for minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, disabled veteran-owned businesses, as well as social equity businesses, which we created in rule. It includes all 6 classes of licenses: cultivators, manufacturers, retailers, wholesalers, and delivery services. We focused on equity and safety. So we created the social equity business designation, which is businesses owned by people with past marijuana convictions or from economically disadvantaged areas. And then we also focus on safety. And so our rules contain strong consumer and public health protections like some of the best labeling requirements in the country. Also set up in the law, I'll note, is an innovative tax and fee structure that Pat Oglesby, friend of mine, colleague, and one of the authors of the seminal RAND report on marijuana legalization from 2010 called Groundbreaking and the First of Its Kind. And I encourage you all to check out Pat's blog called the Center for New Revenue when you get a chance. So this has brought us to, a successful, not only successful expansion of the medicinal cannabis program, but also, a successful first quarter of recreational sales. And I'm going to talk through these numbers. We released these on Friday. Corresponding with this, New Jersey saw tax receipts and fee receipts for both the sales tax and the social equity excise fee at about 4.6 million. That's about 4.4 million for the sales tax receipts and just over 200,000 for the social equity excise fee. But that's coming from just under $80 million in recreational sales. On the recreational side, I think those numbers show that there's a lot of room to grow in this market. And, I think we're starting out. We know there are limited locations, just simple supply and demand, simple economics. When you have limited locations, you have limited supply, you have a lot of demand, prices are going to be higher than they should be. And so, prices are affecting demand. Some locations are affecting demand. So there's a lot of room to grow in the recreational market. And one number I wanted to highlight, while this represents, trend in the right direction. One thing I did want to highlight, my colleague in Michigan, Andrew Brisboe, released, they did their highest number of sales in 1 month alone in July. And they did $188 million in Michigan in 1 month alone. Now they're way ahead of us as far as implementation, but similar population. So if we're talking about the potential that New Jersey has to get to, I think we can look to what they're seeing in Michigan on those total sales numbers. So progress is being made. We're adding new locations every month. We're working on licenses, which I'm going to get to later on in this. And the way we get to the potential of this market is by getting entrepreneurs into the market to do what they do best, which is to serve the consumer, create quality products, and to do so responsibly. The other thing I wanted to highlight here on these numbers is that medicinal cannabis sales remain strong. So in Q4 of 2021, we saw just over 59 million in sales. That dropped slightly in Q1. And we really didn't see an impact to medicinal sales in the first quarter that recreational was available. In fact, we saw the highest sales numbers in the previous 3 quarters in that quarter. That's something we're going to continue to monitor, but right now the medicinal cannabis market remains strong, and in total represents about that, and recreational represents about $140 million in sales in 1 quarter.
So with that, Jeff, if I could interject here,
Yep.
One of the concerns that I think people shared with us as we instituted recreational or adult use sales was what happens to the medical marijuana community. And so first and foremost, I want to again thank you and the CRC because you made the medical community a priority from the onset. Legislative and regulatory intent made it clear. In terms of the transition, people were concerned about how long it took to move from medical only to both medical and adult use. But you were committed as the CRC to making sure that there was infrastructure there, whether it was parking, whether it was having enough kiosks, whether it was handicap access. It was amazing what you had done in terms of holding the current license holders, the ATCs, to their commitment to the medical community. So I just want to applaud that. And as we look at the numbers, again, holding strong. So thank you.
Thanks for that, Ed. And I was at a friend's birthday party over the weekend, and there was another friend there who had gone to a dispensary for the first time, a recreational retailer for the first time, and so they were giving me their 2 cents. But they said they were struck by the fact that all the parking in front was reserved for patients. They went in, there were patient dedicated registers where there was no line and patients were just coming in and going right in and getting served. There was a small line for recreational consumers, but they were being moved efficiently. And thank you for that. For me and for everyone here, that was the priority. And with about 130,000 patients, and still a relatively limited number of dispensaries, although that's improving over time. Making sure that they were prioritized was critical, and that's something we continue to look at. So the ATCs give us weekly patient access reports. We're monitoring that. Our compliance staff are monitoring it. So thank you.
Great, thanks.
All right, so moving on from the market update, I wanted to get into a deep dive into our licensure process, and I'm going to start high level here, just kind of recenter everybody on how this works. And I shared this slide in the pre-application webinar, and then also in our last board meeting. But really, the law sets up two paths to licensure in New Jersey, and there are a lot of states that have done a conditional or provisional license, and everybody has to go through it. And the unique thing about New Jersey is that it really sets up a conditional license process and then an annual license process, and the two happen together. And so on the conditional side, there's really three components to getting to an annual license. There's the conditional application, which is that initial application, initial approval by the CRC. Then there's a conditional license phase. And in the conditional license phase, that's when a conditional license holder should, lock down municipal approval if they haven't already, find their final site, gain site control, whether that's through lease or purchase or whatever. And then once they have and then create a full application package and submit that. And once a conditional license holder submits an application, then essentially that clock stops. They have 5.5 months currently by law and according to the licenses. That stops while it's under review, and then we review the conversion application, and if it meets all the criteria, then it's recommended for approval to our board, to the commissioners, for an annual license. So that's step one. And the conditional licensure process is prioritized, and I'm going to get into our priority schedule later and explain that a little more in depth. We also have the annual license application process. And so applicants can also just submit annually from the get-go. That does, by law, require having site control at the time of application submission. It does require by law having municipal approval at the time of application submission. So there are some additional requirements for the annual license application. And then there's a lot of very specific requirements in the law for those applications that we collect as part of that annual license application. But those two pathways are both ways to get to annual licensure. I do want to note, in thinking about how to create our licensure process, we did spend a lot of time and effort looking at models in other states. So, I mentioned other states do have this provisional process. So Massachusetts is one, Maine is another. There are other states as well. We looked at, different models and really, we thought that having a rolling application basis where we're prioritizing review and approval of specific application types was the best way forward for New Jersey. And part of that was because that ensures that, people who meet the regulatory criteria, applicants who meet the regulatory criteria, are ultimately going to get approved. Some may have to wait more than others, but ultimately, if you've done your work, if you've put together a full application, you will get approved. That's not true of, say, an RFA state where, and we have experience there coming from medicinal, where, everything's scored competitively, and depending on the number of licenses available, if you score high enough, you get one, and if you don't, you don't. Or lotteries, in lotteries, if you meet minimum threshold, then you're put in a lottery, and then, depending on the results of that lottery, you may get a license and you may not. We felt it was very important to, number one, create a licensure process that aligned with our values, the first one being equity. And secondly, that, and I've shared this on previous Lunch and Learns, that really prioritized overall just access to the market and the ability to, if you've put together a complete application, you've checked all the boxes, you've met the regulatory requirements, you're going to get approved. And so that's why, we really landed on the approach that we have here. On the conditional application review process, there's really four components. And I've shared in the pre-application webinar, and I've shared at meetings, that our goal is to get this totally under 90 days. And I can tell, I'm going to share later, I think we're nearly there. But the components of conditional application review. So an application is submitted, it's reviewed for priority. Depending on that priority, it is then moved to completeness review and scoring in accordance with that priority. And applications are sorted first by the type of application and that priority. Social equity businesses first overall, and then they are reviewed and scored in accordance with that priority, and then the time they were submitted. If they pass that, then they're given a review for what we call qualification and regulatory compliance. So, making sure that an application is qualified, an applicant is qualified to be a conditional license holder. So, we outline in reg things that we would be concerned about for people who would, who are applying. If things like they have, a history of violence associated with cannabis, a history of diverting legal cannabis to illegal, states where it's not legal, history of, dispensing or selling cannabis to minors, history of association with organized crime. There's factors that all come from, and really we derived these from the Cole memo, which was federally probably the most important cannabis policy document that's, really been issued to date. And so, provided you meet that, you're compliant with regulations according with your application, then we're going to recommend you for approval by the commission. For conversions and annuals, the process is longer and more involved. And I mentioned that because while for conditionals, we're going to be under 90 days, that's not going to be the case for conversions and annuals. And I'll go through why here. First, you still have the application submission. You have priority review. So, applications are sorted and assigned. Conversions are, fall within kind of a sub priority of the conditional license applications. So they get prioritized over annuals, just straight annual applications. After you're assigned there, then they're assigned by that priority to completeness and scoring. If they're deemed complete, if they pass scoring, and this is where it differs from the previous process, then it gets referred to our investigations, our Office of Compliance and Investigations, and a criminal history is run in accordance with the statute. We have to fingerprint any applicant for any owner, manager, or employee, so we have to run the fingerprints. There's then a financial and qualification investigation that's done, and probity. Probity is really a review of the financing and review of the financial sources. So that all has to take place. Then there's a final review for regulatory compliance. And so if that all happens, then they're recommended for approval by the commission. And so I can tell you our goal here is to get up to the completeness and scoring under 90 days. And then the criminal history, qualification, investigation, probity, and regulatory compliance to another 90 days. So ostensibly, our goal is to get annual or conversions on a 6-month timeline from the time they're submitted, or less than 6-month timeline from the time they're submitted to the time they get to the board for approval if they're deemed ready for approval. I'm confident that a year from now we'll probably be beating that, but that's our goal as of right now. So once approved by the commission, a conversion or an annual application would then be issued an award pending final inspection. And so then the applicant would have to essentially tell us when they are ready for that inspection, when their facility's built out, when they've, think they're totally compliant with all the regulatory requirements. And then we would send an inspector out to do that inspection. And if they've been found compliant, then we would issue that license, which would allow that applicant to start operating under an annual license. So I wanted to dive into the priority a bit more because we do get a lot of questions about this, and we do, I think there is still confusion. So essentially, and I'm going to talk about this in a couple different ways because there's essentially like 3 different, subcategories to applications that all come in and are sorted in accordance with priority. And those are new applications. So, first time you submit an application, depending on what type of priority it meets. And so these are, it's 1 through 10. This is outlined in the notice of application acceptance, but it starts with conditional social equity and it ends with annual applications at 10 that don't, qualify for bonus points as an impact zone applicant, as an annual diversely owned business, or as a social equity business. And depending on where they fall on priority, they're put into that category. And then within each category, they're ordered by time. So, a conditional social equity cultivator that was submitted on December 15th is going to be reviewed before a conditional social equity cultivator that was submitted on, March 15th. Similarly, a conditional diversely owned cultivator that was submitted on December 15th of 2021 will be reviewed before a conditional diversely owned applicant that was submitted, in early 2021 was submitted. But it's, understanding that's how it works. As we receive more social equity business applications and more diversely owned business applications, we have to get through all of those first before we get to the licenses that are later in the queue. Importantly, new applications come in, conversions come in, they're sorted as well, and we're starting to see a number of conversions come in, but also cures come in. And I wanted to stop on the cure process for a second, because we've had, and this has happened on a number of occasions, we have applicants, come to the public meetings, as everybody's, able to do, and comment, and they say my application hasn't been reviewed. And then we look them up in the system and find they've gotten 1 or 2 cure letters. And in fact, if you've gotten a cure letter, that means your application has in fact been reviewed. It's been reviewed substantively, and we've gotten back to you and told you what you need to do to fix your application so that we can move it forward. When an applicant gets a cure and then resubmits, their application gets treated essentially just like a new application, and they get put back into the queue according to this priority. So, every time an application is sent back to an applicant and it comes back in, it's once again sorted in this priority level. Now, the good news there is if we're most of the way through social equity businesses, and I'm going to cover progress in a second because I know everybody's very interested to know that. If we're working in the priority 1 category, and you get a cure for priority 1, when it comes back in, we're probably going to be able to review it pretty quickly. Similarly, in some of those, whatever category we're working in at the time, and according to that review process. But I do want to emphasize, new apps, conversions, and cures, they all come in. They're all sorted in the same manner, first by priority, and this is the designation list 1 through 10, with 1s getting reviewed before 10s, and then by time. And so those are really the 2 ways we sort applications and we review them. And I'm going to cover some of the statistics, but I did want to note that we knew, and I think anybody who's watched these markets get up and running in other states should also know, that the initial rush of applications is going to be substantial. And I can tell you, we're at just over 1,200 received right now. I honestly thought it would be more than that. I was expecting more, akin to 2,000. I'm not saying I want 2,000 applications, but we've seen that in some other states. I think in Missouri, when they did a medical round, they got like 2,000 applications. Oklahoma's a bit unique, but I think they got like 10,000 applications in their first rush. So we knew this was going to happen. We have a team, about a third of the people who work at the CRC at this point are working on license applications at the moment, and we're going to devote whatever staff resources we need to get through this rush. But we knew it was going to be a rush, and that's why in the pre-application webinar, we emphasized that this is going to be longer than 90 days for a lot of applicants at first, and especially for annual, where it's a longer process anyway, and then also we have to get through all the conditionals first before we get to the annuals. So I want to talk through what we've seen as far as application submission. I think this is telling for where people are at in the review process. So if you look at the percentages of total apps we've received, and again, we're just over 1,200 applications right now, 25% of the applications submitted have come into that conditional social equity category. So that's first overall. 52%, so essentially just under 600 just over 600 at this point, applications have come into that conditional diversely owned category. So the lion's share of the applications that we've received have come into that category specifically. And then really low percentages in everything else. And I'll note, you can see here, we lump the priorities 3 through 10 together. They represent a total of 24% of the total applications received. Now, I say that because, we were able to get through most of category 1, pretty much, I'd say between March and, March was when we issued our first licenses. Between March and July, maybe June or July, we started getting into those diversely owned, that conditional diversely owned category. So we certainly have the ability to move quickly and to move applications quickly and to get through applications, a full 24% of applications in a quick and efficient manner. So where do we stand today? And the caveat here, this is a snapshot in time. We're receiving new applications every day. We're receiving cures every day. Cures are going out. We're getting resubmitted applications that are being sorted, and conversions are being received every day. And all apps are being reviewed in accordance with regulations. And some, I'll just tell you, some do take longer than others to review. So, you know, there are some that have, you know, more in-depth submissions. Some, you know, I can tell we've had instances where, you know, applications have been submitted. There's been a conflict between owners, and one of the owners has submitted another application. We've had to conduct kind of a mini investigation to kind of see what's going on. So there are complicating factors that can extend out reviews of applications just based on the specifics of the application. But overall, I'm proud to report right now that we are, as of today, we are through reviews, at least one review of all the conditional applications. And so annuals are being assigned out for review right now. And so that, you know, I can tell you that and if you look at these numbers, you know, and the number of applications at the end of last week, there was only 130 applications that hadn't received a complete initial review. So we are making progress. That number is getting lower and lower every day. So this is great. We're moving. My goal was to get to the end of the list in the fall, and we were on track to meet that goal. One thing I did want to talk about, and I'm going to go back for a second for annuals, because I know there are folks waiting in the queue, waiting for those annuals to get reviewed. One thing to just anticipate is once, you know, it's complete and scored, then you're going to receive outreach from our compliance and investigations department. And probably the first thing you'll receive is a fingerprint form. And it'll tell you, it'll have a code. And you'll use that for, you know, key folks, any persons of interest who are subject to a criminal history background check, to go set up an appointment with Identigo, fingerprint places. They're all over New Jersey, all over the country. You can use that code to go to many of them, as long as the state, even if it's not New Jersey, if you're in a state and they have an agreement with that allows those results to be used across state lines, then you'll be able to go to an Identigo in another state. It's important that you get that done ASAP, because that you know, us getting those results back can hold up the application. And really, you know, everybody who's on the application, everybody who's a person of interest, meets that qualification, should get a criminal history background check. The instructions are in that. So as soon as you receive that, you should expeditiously make those appointments, have you and your team get fingerprinted so we can get those results and we can move the application forward. You'll also receive outreach from an investigator who will be doing the probity review, who will probably have some questions about financing, the overall business. Again, it's important to be responsive there. You know, we can move those investigations in as little as 30 days if we have quick compliance with the fingerprints and we have responsiveness to the investigators. When they drag on is when you know, people drag their feet. They take some time to get fingerprinted. You know, they don't submit the information asked of them by our investigators. So we can get through it very quickly within 30 days. The reason I said 90 days earlier is just from experience. You know, we tend to see people drag their feet for whatever reason. But you know, we can move as fast as you can move on those pieces. So go back here. So yeah, so reviewers are working on annuals right now. That doesn't mean they're going to be on the September agenda, but that does mean they're in process, and that process is moving. And like I said, we're holding true to what I've said before. We're trying to get through the whole list by this fall. So that's really, you know, all I had. You know, I do want to emphasize one thing. You know, I wanted to just extend, you know, my appreciation for everybody who's signed on today and everybody who's been patient as we work through this process. You know, I mentioned that we knew we were going to get a glut of applications and we knew we would have to work through them. I know that doesn't, you know, fix the issue of having to hold a property or having to, you know, negotiate with municipalities or having to, you know, just hold tough while we get through those applications. So, you know, I do want to just note that we know that folks are getting frustrated and antsy, and that's why we've devoted as many resources as we possibly can to get these applications done get those move forward that are ready to be moved forward, and get through the full list, so that when we do open up for applications for distributors, wholesalers, and delivery services, we'll be starting at square one. We will have gone through the full list well before we get to that point. So with that, Ed, thank you for having me, and I'm happy to go to any questions here.
Great, Jeff. Again, I can't thank you enough, because this is immense work. First and foremost, let's acknowledge that this is immense work, that a lot is going into the progress of the permitting and licensing aspects of the industry. So thank you, and thank you for taking time out to join us. So I'll do it this way. Let's highlight some of the questions, so as not to deal with individual cases per se, but on a very high level. Number one, and this is also how people can help themselves, check your email. If you supplied a separate email with respect to your new business, let's call it a new business, check that email. Make sure that the CRC emails are not ending up in your spam or junk folders, because you may have in fact been contacted regarding a cure. So let's help ourselves. Let's check our email. Let's check our PO boxes or whatever addresses that we've used, where you may in fact be receiving notifications from the CRC. With respect to the cures, if I complete my cure, I resubmit it, I'm back in the queue, but based on prioritization, right?
That's correct. Yep.
Based on prioritization.
That's correct. And one thing I do want to emphasize is that we have now been through all those applications in the diversely owned conditional category that accounted for 52% of the total applications. And so, really, that's why I said earlier in the webinar, like, I think for all of those conditionals, we should be getting through them, barring any of those extenuating circumstances with particular applications. We should be getting through most of them within 90 days. They're I don't want to say they're relatively easy to review, but it's easier. We're looking at a business plan, we're looking at a regulatory compliance plan, and we're seeing about 20 applications submitted a week, which is a totally manageable number. Most of them still conditional, but that's a manageable number. So that's important context, because when the cures come in, and I can tell you when cures come in, they're getting assigned out pretty quickly. I've been reviewing applications myself, and it is all hands on deck. And I could tell you that I put together some cure letters, and they went out, and 2 weeks later, I got those applications back to review again. And so that applicant probably submitted a cure in a week. It took a week to get through that priority back to me to reviewed them, and so we're getting through them. Once we've gotten. That's why it was so important to get through this initial rush, because it's just going to make the whole process more manageable, both for us and for applicants coming in here, because we'll be able to move things as they come in. They'll be assigned by priority. But it was really just we had I think an initial rush of like 400 in that first month on cultivators and manufacturers, and then similarly when we opened up for retailers, and it's been a steady flow ever since. So now that we're through that the lion's share here, and once we get through that full list, it's going to be a whole lot manageable for all involved going forward.
All right, very good. Thank you, Jeff. And so, and this is a common question. And first, I'm going to start with a statement, and that is, if you haven't joined the New Jersey Cannabis Association, you should have. Many of you, I'm sure, that are on this webinar, this Zoom, I'm sure you have joined, but if you haven't, please do, because a lot of your questions we do get answered in our other Lunch and Learn segments. So stay tuned, be a member of the NJCBA. So with that being said, one of the common questions that we get in our office is, I haven't heard anything yet. When will I hear something? If you could take a moment to address the notion of, hey, I submitted, but I haven't heard anything yet, especially if it's somebody who says, I date back to December.
Yeah. So, I before we made it through that full diversely owned conditional category, there were some folks who would probably in the conditional section who hadn't heard for a while. We do, when we get emails into and we have an email address, crc.licensing@crc.nj.gov. We're responsive. Now, they'll say it's under review. And that legitimately means it's under review. I think people are looking for more specificity when they email, but just given that we're talking about deliberative government processes, there's really only so much we can say. And if we're saying it's under review, it means we have the application, it's in process, and you will hear something. Now that we've been through the conditionals that we had, this whole process is just going to go a whole lot quicker for all involved. I would also, so if you're on if you're on a team, make sure you're checking in with whoever submitted that application. We've certainly had instances where there's a communication breakdown between whoever submitted the application and other people on that team or on that application. Because that's who we really communicate with, is whoever the prime contact is on that application. So that's who the cure letter will go to. That's who any, other correspondence from us will go to, would be that primary contact on the application. So make sure, if you aren't the primary contact, make sure you're communicating with them.
Great. And so now I'll jump to the question of annuals, and correct me, but you're now at the process, you're now in the process where you are in fact beginning to look at annual applications. So annuals are in fact now being reviewed.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Now, yeah. Is there, so annuals, are you segmenting cultivation annuals and?
No, it's simply based on that priority. Okay.
Annuals are annuals.
Annuals are annuals. And so,
Okay.
We'll do the social equity business annuals first. Those are probably all assigned out now for review. And then diversely owned business annuals, then impact zone business annuals, then bonus point annuals, and then just, the all other annual category, which is only about 1% of the applications. I do want to say something on this. There's one individual who said there's a status update field in the application portal, but it never changes. So it does when you get to license issuance. So it will move through the process to license issuance. So, but something we're going to work with the vendor on kind of 2.0 is aligning the stages in the application portal with the actual stages of our review. So you'll be able to see your application move through a little more effectively. But just note, if it's been submitted and it says it's submitted, then we have it, and it's going to get reviewed.
Excellent. So with that, and then I saw some questions dealing with statistics. And so I'll give a shout out to the Director of Diversity and Inclusion, Wesley McWhite, who actually does a lot of your statistical information. So I would say to our attendees, our guests, if you're interested in some of these statistical data, shoot an email maybe to Wesley McWhite at the CRC, so that you can get an update on some of the statistics.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I'll note, we quarterly release statistics on license holders. And so the last time we did that was in June, which means the next update should be in September. Now we did move up the September meeting, and that agenda is not set yet, but I anticipate somewhere around September, October, we'll have additional data out on license holders. And after we present on our public meetings, which is where we release those things, then that information is then released on our website. I'm going to look for the link so I can just put it in the chat here. If I don't, though, you can find it. You can look on our website and find it.
Okay. Excellent. So, Jeff, while you're doing that, and in the interest of time, because again, for you to take time out and join us at the NJCBA, can't thank you enough for doing that. So, as we are looking at wrapping up, and I'll let you close us out with your parting comments. But before I turn it over to you, once again, I'm Ed DeVoe, president of the New Jersey Cannabis Association. I want to thank today's sponsors: Burton, Trent Public Affairs, Curaleaf, Financial Resources Federal Credit Union, Puffin Entrepreneurs and Investors, the Syska Hennessy Group, Sprague, our energy partners, Dutchie, Garden State Greenhouse, PROTEUS 420, Saks LLP, the Sheet Metal Workers Local 19, and the UFCW, United Food and Commercial Workers. Also, please do visit our website, not only for membership, although that's important because that allows us to do programming much like today. But check out, put on your calendars, mark October 27th for our major event where, again, we are about the business of cannabis. We encourage you to come so that you can help your business. That's what we do as the state's Cannabis Chamber of Commerce. And we'll also be giving you some updates for some other events in September. We are looking to have a networking event, probably not as cool as our barbecue last month, last month, July 28th. But I want to thank everyone who attended that event. It was a packed house. We thank you for attending. So October 27th, please do put it on your calendar. And one more general question, Jeff, and then please do close us out. But some folks are asking about the remaining licensing categories. So I know you're working on them, but if you could share that.
Sure. So the regs were proposed on August 1st. There's a 60-day public comment period. So I encourage everybody who's interested in those licenses to go to our website, the information on, review them. We encourage you to comment on them. That's how we kind of look at what we've proposed and make sure that it makes sense. So once we go through those public comments, we have to respond to everyone. And then once we do that, then we will propose the regulations for formal adoption. The board, the commissioners here would have to vote on that. And then if approved, then they would, then once they appear in the New Jersey Register, once they're published, they're effective. I can't say for certain, but I would anticipate an updated notice of application acceptance somewhere around the adoption of those regs.
Great, thank you. So Jeff, anything you want us to close out with?
No, I'll just say, thanks to everyone who joined on a Tuesday in the summer. I know a lot of people on vacation, rightly so. Thank you for joining. And thank you, Ed, and the New Jersey Cannabis Business Association. Again, can't thank you enough for being the partners that you have been in this process and helping to give us, really critical feedback on the industry and how you view it should be set up here in New Jersey. So thank you, and look forward to doing this again soon.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much for taking time out. We really appreciate it. Visit our website for membership as well as our upcoming events. Thank you so much. Look, we could do this all day, but we're not going to. So much, Jeff.
All right, thank you. Have a good one.
Thanks so much. Look forward to working with you all. Thank you.